I wanted to briefly discuss something that I woke up this morning thinking about that really I think maybe we need to explore a little more is how our overgeneralizations are essentially destroying our world. And what I mean is, our view of our life is generally built, as humans, we generally build ways of moving through the world based on these generalizations about the world. So, for example, hot stoves will burn us. So we form a generalization to keep us away from hot stoves so we don't get burned. But we also have a tendency sometimes to overgeneralize, to place certain situations or people into certain categories, and then to react to the category rather than the specific situation or the specific person or the specific group. Now, this again, I think is a natural human tendency, but I think with work and effort, we could possibly overcome that tendency. It takes effort though, because most people are more comfortable overgeneralizing information about people, about situations. The media absolutely loves to overgeneralize about groups of people, about certain topics, about certain individuals. So it gives us a very skewed view of how life really is. For example, uh, if you think of any major uh, issue going on, the media is real quick, and other people are too, at throwing us into groups. So, for example, right now we are dealing with, while this is being recorded, in the pandemic with COVID, and I've noticed that anytime someone wants to just question a little bit, maybe just seeking more information about vaccines or strategies for treatment, it's real quick that certain groups will lump them into a certain category of the anti vaxxers or the conspiracy theorists. And there are certainly those groups, but it's just a real quick overgeneralization. And to be fair, the opposite is people who are more pro getting vaccinated, and that some of the other groups will, define them as, pharmaceutical sheep who just follow the government narrative, and that may or may not be true depending on who's creating these categories. Same thing with politics. It is designed, I think, a lot of times by media outlets to get the most sensational story. And the way we get the most sensational story is to divide us into groups, Group A and Group B. So, whoever is the target, we overgeneralize everything. So you hear things, well, you know how Democrats are, you know how Republicans are, you know how Whigs are, who Tories are, whatever in your particular country it is, to try and create this binary way of seeing the world. So if you agree with one point of a certain political party, you can really quickly get lumped into a category that you may or may not fit in. We see this too with the bulk of, I think, racial issues is that there's an overgeneralization. We get information and then we put it into these categories. Unfortunately, we don't question the categories. So if we see hypothetically that a certain racial group of people, one member of this group did something that wasn't pleasant or wasn't nice or illegal or whatever, it's really easy if we don't catch ourselves to start building this huge mental case that all members of that group. So you start hearing all, the word all, always, never, these big overgeneralizations about the world. And unfortunately, this ends up destroying us because we don't question those overgeneralizations. There's a lot of selective perception, and what I mean by that is when we start believing that these categories that we've created or have been given to us and we've accepted are absolutely 100% true, then when new information comes in, it's real easy for us to kick that new information out because it doesn't fit this idea that this category exists in stone. And a lot of times, and I would say even most times, we don't even realize that we're doing it. So I remember a quote by William James, the father of American psychology. It was something about, if you see one white crow then you can never say that all crows are the color black. So just because a group of people, a group of situations, a group of individuals, whatever it is, does a certain thing doesn't mean that everyone that you put in that group does. So we do this to ourselves too. If we've made a bad decision or two, it's real easy for us to fall back on the always. This always happens to me. I never make good decisions. I'll never be successful. And so what we're doing is we're overgeneralizing one series of actions or events to globalize it to our world. And then when somebody points out, well, no, you're not always a failure. Look, you did X, Y, and Z. You may find yourself going, yeah, but, and then trying to reinforce that overwhelmingly skewed view of what you perceive as reality. Where those people pointing that out are actually there to help you sometimes. And maybe just taking time to sit back once you get out of that emotional reactive state and go, huh, well, that might be true. Well, let me investigate it. So if there's a certain category of information that you've overgeneralized and you catch yourself, I highly recommend that you spend some time looking at alternate views. It doesn't mean you have to agree with them all the time, but just seeing what else is out there. It's really amazing when you spend time and you're in a good frame of mind to go and look at different viewpoints and try your best. And it's hard sometimes to not be emotionally reactive to those viewpoints. You can learn so much about yourself, so much about where a lot of times what you thought was true is not even remotely true. Or it may show you, hey, I'm actually right on that, and my generalizations are effective. In psychological research, the whole goal is to come up with enough information that you can generalize to the population. But even in that research, any real true researcher will tell you it can't be everybody. So it's like medication. If you have a medication that you test and it works 98% of the time, I mean that's we're generalizing to the population that this will work. But that 2% doesn't mean it's always going to work for them. So we have to say there's always going to be somebody who this might not work for. The same kind of thing that there's always going to be someone who might be of a different political party than me, or a different racial group than me, or a different gender group than me, or a different view of whatever issue that might not be fully stuck in that category. And so maybe I can tone down some of my reactivity to those people and see them more as individuals, these ideas as individual ideas rather than global liberals, conservatives, and just kind of keeping us at war. Because I believe there are some parties that like to keep us at war, to keep us fighting amongst ourselves, and to be closed to new information. So, something I think, to think about, and it's a practice because just when we think that we've stopped overgeneralizing, we sometimes catch ourselves to see that we are. So hopefully it's a practice that we can all implement and make our lives and our world a little better. Most wars are created sometimes by overgeneralizations. So let's have a little more peace in our world and our lives.